What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and to another Outriders video. Today we're going to be looking at Debuff Trickster. Debuff as a role is something that I've been obsessed with as of late. In all the duos and trios that I've been running, this is a role that I like to play, and fundamentally I think that the Pyromancer suits this role very well, but I've been obsessed with creating something similar or something equal as good in my mind on the Trickster side. And of course I think the core points there, the core things to use would be the Trespasser set and a lot of deception skills, essentially turning the Trickster into this skill powerhouse that debuffs the entire map while still being able to deal a fair bit of damage itself. Of course, my objective always is to not just build something that is good in a co-op situation, but is also good in a solo situation. And definitely that is something that we have today. So if you find this useful or like this video in any way, please do consider giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, or maybe sharing the video with a buddy. It really does help the channel grow, and it just means a whole lot to me. But without any further ado, let's jump right in. Now, when we start looking at the building blocks and how this all comes together, of course our foundation is the Trespasser set. The set bonus from the Trespasser set gives us a flat damage increase based on how many enemies are affected by deception skills. So we do know that we want to put in as many deception skills as possible. Now, Time Rift is probably one of the best skills that is available to the Trickster, so that's an auto include. Venator's Knife is also a good option, just simply due to the fact that it doubles all the damage that you deal to the enemies. Unfortunately not your teammates as well, that would make the skill so good, but it doubles all the damage that comes from you, but at the same time also provides this great slow CC ability, which is fantastic. And now in the past I've messed with things like Temporal Blade, and I've messed with things like Hunter Prey to move myself around the battle. But in the end, what I ended up settling with for this build, and what I'm very happy with, is Slow Trap. Now, Slow Trap in itself is not an offensive ability really, but due to the way how it interacts with the Trespasser set, it means that as long as you're in the Slow Trap, you can't die, and neither can any of your allies, so that's one good thing. And then the other thing is also that it's this fantastic way of denying access to an area, because the minute enemies come into it, they slow down horribly. You can CC them much better, you can move around a lot better, and it's a great way for you to create essentially a choke point in the map. Now, all of that together gives you the ability to dramatically ramp up your damage. And if you have good AoE weapons like I'm using in the footage that you're seeing here right now, you're able to leverage off of that additional damage that you can get, and you can essentially become not just a great debuff or CC machine, but also able to push out great numbers as well. This is the thing that I like about this class, or specifically this build, is that it plays so well whether you go solo or whether you go in duos, or trios for that matter, without actually having to swap anything around. A lot of the times what I do if I run solo or if I run in a group is I might swap out a mod or two, because it might be more efficient to have a certain mod that gives you more defensive ability when you're solo, because you're the sole focus of attack, whereas to swap out for something a little bit more offensive if you're in trios, because you might not be getting all of the aggro, for instance. Honestly, I think the reason why I've been having so much fun with this build is because it plays like a Pyromancer. Now, I'm a Pyromancer main. It's the class that I know the most about, and by far the one that I have the most hours played on. And so it's obviously makes sense that I would go ahead and create a Trickster that plays like a Pyromancer. So definitely, if that's a sense of play, or style of play rather, that you enjoy in the game, and that is that the focus is much more on your skills and sort of funneling enemies into areas that you can get the maximum amount of effect from the skill usage, while having extremely low cooldown so you can use those skills as much as possible, then this is definitely the build for you. But let's go ahead and look at the detail. So, skills first. We're using as many as possible deception skills so that we can benefit from the set bonus of Trespasser as much as possible. That means we're using Slow Trap, Time Rift, and Venator's Knife. We're trying to stack as much cooldown reduction as possible because we want to be using these skills all the time. Like I said, we kind of want to play this like a Pyromancer. Now, each one of these skills has multiple things that it represents for the build. Slow Trap is a damage boost for you, but it is also a way for you to basically become invulnerable and impossible to kill as long as you stay within the bubble, while you and your allies. Then in the case of Time Rift, this is an excellent way for us to deal damage to the dot that Time Rift does with the right mods on it, but also at the same time providing CC and lifting enemies up in the air and debuffing them with weakness. And then last but not least, we have Venator's Knife, which also deals damage, but is another way for us to see here as well, providing this slow effect, while also ramping up your damage and giving you this much needed double damage effect that you can get from it. Now, when we look at our weapons here, I'm using a Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent, probably the best mod and weapon combination in the game bar none. I have it on 5 of my 6 characters just because it's that powerful. When you hip fire this gun, all of those projectiles rain down and they can proc multiple times, and it just deals a whole lot of AoE damage. It's too good not to use. Now, I also do run the Moaning Winds meta in the background here. This is often used for situations where I've got like an elite, a captain, or a boss down to almost death, and then I just quickly cycle out and deal that damage to them. When you get into duos and trios situations, this can help you help the team out as well, especially in situations where you get a bunch of enemies to focus on you. You hit them with the slow trap, and then you just Moaning Winds and it kills everything inside the slow trap. I also have on the pistol here, I have Torment and Agony, again with Moaning Winds on there, and that's just further on the Moaning Winds meta. Now, generally speaking, and I'm sure as you saw in the footage in the background there, I'm not actually switching to pistol, so I'm mostly switching between these two weapons, and mostly I'm using Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent to poke the enemies while I hit them with a combination of my skills as well. And when we go over to the actual armor, the gear, then as mentioned, I'm using Trespasser, and more specifically I'm using the head, the chest, and the legs of Trespasser, because all 3 of these give me bonus firepower, but more specifically all 3 of these give me cooldown reduction and close range damage. Now, I don't use the hands and the feet because those would give me max health, and even though this is not a firepower build, I'd rather take the bonus firepower than the additional health, simply due to the fact that this build doesn't actually have a problem with survivability, especially if you play it correct around things like slow trap and around things like time rift, and more specifically depending on which items you take, or rather which nodes you take in the class tree. Now, on the head, I have Boomerang Blades and Long Range. Boomerang Blades allows Venator's Knife to essentially repeat on itself once. So when you throw it out, it'll pass through its amount of targets and then essentially go through one more time. And each one of those hits applies the slow again and also applies the damage again. So this is a fantastic way for you to just get additional damage out of the skill. And what can also happen is situations where you can throw it, and then if some of those targets die around the way, on its second repeat back, it'll hit some new ones. Now, long range, this increases the distance that the time rift travels by 3, essentially triples it. Time rift by itself, I think, goes between, it's always difficult for me to gauge, and I always have people telling me that I get the distances wrong, but this is like, I think time rift probably stretches somewhere between 8 to 10 meters, and so this essentially makes it reach that much further back. The bottom line is usually with time rift you can only reach stuff in the close range, where this goes all the way into the back of the long range, and this is especially noticeable in expositions or expeditions, not expositions. Jesus, what's going on today? In expeditions where you have long lanes of fire and where you can throw a time rift down and you'll see it essentially captures everything along the way. Now next, the chest piece, we have Pain Transfer and Ultimate Big Range on here. Ultimate Big Range just increases the sphere size of Slow Trap, and we're not putting too many mods on Slow Trap. We basically already have almost everything we want on Slow Trap, and that is that it creates this choke point, this null zone where enemies get slowed down when they come into it, but also that it makes you invulnerable, and that you already get from the set bonus, so you don't actually need to mod for that. So we have Ultimate Big Range on here as mentioned, but we have Pain Transfer on here, which is a fantastic mod for Time Rift that essentially shares all, 20% of weapon damage and 30% of anomaly damage between all the enemies that are hit. So basically when you hit something in the front and the wave travels through, you can concentrate all your damage on the front, and that damage will cascade through all the enemies in the back. This works out for your teammates as well, and this is why this is such an excellent skill, or rather a mod for a skill to use in a debuff situation. When we get over to the pants here, we have Captain Hunter on here. As always, trash is usually never ever a problem for any build or any class for that matter. It's when you deal with captains, elites, and bosses where your damage might sometimes not be good enough. So anything that you can do to enhance that obviously helps, and that's where Captain Hunter comes in. This is especially useful in situations again where you play in multiplayer, because then you have these very big health pools to deal with. So if any additional help that you can get to deal damage to them is much appreciated. A little bit of pain is super sexy, and this is one of the best, in fact, in my opinion, the best mod for Time Rift. And this essentially gives the skill this dot effect. So over the next 6 seconds, 422k will be dealt to the enemies. Now, generally speaking, when you throw this on a group of trash, you can turn around and you can run away. That trash will die to this without any intervention from your side. And usually when it comes to things like captains or elites, you can hit him with this and then hit him with run rounder shots, or hit him with this, hit him with a Venator's knife, shoot him with your gun, and they die from it. So it really deals a crap load of damage. And this damage is of course increased by the amount of enemies that are affected by deception skills. So every enemy that's hit by this is 6% increase, and so on and so forth. So when we get over to the hands here, for my 2 purple pieces, my 2 epics, I'm stacking cooldown reduction, anomaly power, and skills life leech. Status power is not that useful in this because of the way how slow and the suspension in the air and all of that doesn't really benefit that much from that. And it's much better for you to get skills life leech on here because you're going to be using your skills a lot, and it's a great way for you to top up on life and increase your survivability. A cooldown reduction needs no explanation. That's of course very important, and the reason why I ended up going for anomaly power here and not just fully going into the firepower side of it is because I wanted to beef up my Venator's knife a little bit. So on the hands we have double time. This actually keeps enemies in the air for twice as long with the time rift. This is phenomenal because oftentimes you'll be able to kill stuff before they're even dropping back to the earth, especially in the case of trash and elites. But sometimes when it comes to bosses, you might need to put a couple of shots into them when they land down, but by then your next time rift is ready, and if they don't resist that, they just go up again. I have anomaly cut on here which says that shots on enemies marked by the knife receive 58 additional anomaly damage. Now this just means that when you throw the Venator's knife, it gives them that debuff that they take double damage. This means that when you shoot them, it also does this anomaly damage to them as well. So this is just damage plus and essentially dealing more damage to them. That means that generally speaking, you don't even have to use time rift to wipe out trash. You can often hit them with 1 round of Venator's knife. Remember, the Venator's knife is going to come back again, and then if they survive that, you can hit them with a shot from your shotgun and they go down. When we go over to the boots, we have time crack on here. This is another debuff. As I've said, I've built this class with the idea of running it in group situations, and so time crack is another way for you to essentially debuff the enemies. This reduces the enemy's armor and resistance by 35% for 5 seconds, and this is anything that you hit with time rift. And generally speaking, any of you that have played with time rift, especially the version of time rift that goes the triple distance, you'll know that you can hit a whole group of enemies with a time rift, and so you can debuff a big group of enemies, and this can allow your teammates to capitalize on that and deal a whole bunch of additional damage to them. Last but not least, I also have sharpening on here, which is another buff to Venator's knife, which increases the skills damage, the damage of each blade itself, to the enemies by a flat amount as well. So as you can see, most of my mods I've gone and focused into as much utility into time rift and as much damage into Venator's knife. Now, last but surely not least, we get over to the class tree, and with the class tree, we're going bottom because we want to be picking up anomaly. Primarily because I want my Venator's knives to hit really hard. I also want to be able to augment any additional anomaly damage that I can cause. And then what we're doing is we're doing some weird kind of like half and half situation where we go mid and bot. Mid gives us a lot of survivability because along here we pick up things like, you know, additional resistance, less damage from elites. We're making our weakness last longer, which is of course something that comes from time rift. And so we're also trying to just drop the cooldowns. And the cool thing about the middle tree is every time you get one of these cooldown reductions, it essentially reduces all 3 of the skills which you use their cooldown, which is just phenomenal. Now, the reason why we don't go all the way to the end, for instance, of something like the middle tree is, you know, every activation of deception skills grants you 50% shield. This is a survivability thing, and this if you go just mid tree with something like this, you're going to be tanky as hell, but you're not going to be able to deal as much damage. You'll still deal quite a bit of damage, but it just won't be as much. Now, the same reason why we don't go to the bottom all the way to the end is this says that for each enemy in close range, your anomaly power is increased by 6%. Now, we aren't using anything like, you know, I mean, we're not using temporal blade or so on, which really benefits from a crap load of anomaly. And also we're not really benefiting from building into resistance piercing, anything like that, where we ramp our, you know, anomaly through the roof and then hit with these big hits. So that's the other reason why we do this half and half approach. We're just trying to stack in as much anomaly, as much cooldown, as much additional sort of pluses that we can put in here without picking up the capstones in any tree. Now, you're welcome to try when you build this to just go bottom tree, to just go mid tree, or for that matter, to go top tree and just pivot into a firepower class. And you will probably find success in that, but that will turn you much more offensive, and it will be much more focused on making you good in a solo environment. The reason why I have it set up this way is this is the best way for me while playing it in co-op, and this is usually how I play this particular character. So again, like I said, really here the sky's the limit. It's basically how you want to play the class. If you want to focus more on the firepower side and you have the weapons to support that, then you can absolutely do that. But nonetheless, this setup here gives me very good cooldown reduction and very good utility on the skills that I want to use. We absolutely do want to be picking up with this scything because that gives our class melee also the effect of, you know, giving something weakness. So this is a good way for you to also just run and, you know, AoE melee into a group of enemies and give them weakness as well. And then last but not least, this says every time when you activate a deception skill, you increase your anomaly power by 50%. All three of your skills are deception skills, so your anomaly is permanently going to be increased by 50%. And that's it for the build and the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below what you would change with this, how you would set up the class tree, the skills and the mods, if you would do it differently, or if you just prefer to play the Trickster in the classic space ninja assassin kind of way, where you hunt a prey and behind something, you just unload a bunch of shotgun shells in their back before they know you're there, and then teleport away before anybody notices that you were even there. But more importantly, I want you to have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.